Looks like it's working.
Yeah, it is. And then here's the YouTube link for anybody who wants it. So we're live.
Thank you. Disabling chat now for Brown Act purposes.
Thank you.
And let's see, we've got
We need a chair. We don't have a chair yet, but
a few people to show up
not
still.
quite there. Yeah.
I'll be back. Oh, on cue, Martin and Silver.
Oh. Okay, so we need
Australian Chen Lao.
Australian Chen Lao. See, there you are, keeping me honest.
As best I can. A never-ending job.
It is a never-ending job. Oh, the superintendent needs all the help she can get. Should I text Jim, I wonder? Oh, there he is. Yay. All right, our fearless leader is here. You're up, Trustee Osterling, and you are muted.
Thank you. Do we have all the trustees here?
I believe so.
Six. Okay. All right. I'm going to formally call this study session to order. This is study session number 10, and today's date is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, and we will start with the roll call. Mr. Bucklehide, please.
Trustee Chen Lao.
Here.
Trustee Osterling.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Silver.
Here.
Trustee Wah.
Here.
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Trustee Fellow.
Here.
Student Trustee Ramirez.
Here.
All present and accounted for.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we need someone to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Gohar, I don't think you've ever had that honor before. Would you be willing to undertake that today?
Oh my goodness. Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. You're on.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
under
nation,
God,
under
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
Justice.
justice for all.
Gohar, thank you for leading us in that. That's not easy to do in the Zoom format. And our next item is public comment on non-agenda items. And Trustee Wah or Mr. Bucklehide, do we have any public comment?
No such comment.
Okay, so no public comment, and so we will move directly to agenda item B, which is our study session. And of course, this is the ISER, or the ACC-JC accreditation process, and this is information and discussion. And Dr. Androgenis, how would you like to conduct this study session? Who do you have on tap here?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn this over to Dr. Thea Alvarado, who has been our amazing, amazing faculty co-chair on our ISER process. And she and Gohar are going to take it from here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm the Faculty Accreditation Coordinator, and Gohar Momjan is a Vice President for the ACC-JC, and she is our point person and liaison with the ACC-JC, and she has a presentation prepared for you all. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Gohar.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Thea. I had the pleasure of meeting with Thea and Crystal not too long ago to prepare for this presentation. So I want to thank them for their time, of course. All right, hopefully you can all see the presentation there. So again, my name is Gohar Momjan, and I'm so pleased to be here. I'm Vice President at ACC-JC. And PCC is in my portfolio of colleges, and I love all of our community colleges, but I have to say Pasadena has a little special place in my heart because it's my hometown. And so certainly I'm familiar and know how to get around the block over there. So we're going to spend today sort of preparing you in anticipation of your discussion on the ISER, as well as this is a great grounding place for all of the trustees. I know you've all had varied experiences with accreditation and establishing a baseline of knowledge for all of you. Today, we're really going to go over the purpose, the process, and a brief overview of all the standards. We won't go through all 127 of them. I'll share with you a little bit about how the commission, ACC-JC, has been evolving over the last few years and how we continue to progress as we improve our own processes, as well as spend some time on the roles and responsibilities of the governing board. There's an entire standard area that's dedicated to the governing board, and you play such a pivotal role in the accreditation of the institution. And then have a brief discussion on the ISER and reviewing the ISER and the board's role in that. I'm going to also ask, I don't think there's a chat, but certainly just unmute, and if you need to interrupt me, I'll take a pause and I'll ask Thea to kind of monitor any of the body language, because I can't see all of you when I'm sharing the screen here. So just interrupt me if you need to. So accreditation is really this practice of academic quality control, and it's based on accreditation standards, which are all of these statements of what is expected of an institution that provides quality education. And our focus is really on raising the bar of student learning and achievement over time as we apply the accreditation standards to an institution. And we're so fortunate here in the US that this is a peer review driven process. If you've worked, I don't know if that's me. Okay. If you've worked in any other country or lived in another country, certainly you know that typically accreditation is managed by the government, like a Ministry of Education. And so here it's a peer review process. It's not the Department of Education that's coming to visit you and lead you through this process, but you get to rely on your peers in community colleges to manage this professional accountability model of ensuring quality education. And it takes a lot of work, and I know your college has been engaged in this process over the last 2 years. And so I think your leadership and your faculty leadership for getting you to this milestone. And people ask me, it's like, why do we go through all this trouble? Why do we have to do this? And as part of this process, right, you want to assure the public that a degree from PCC means something, that your students can transfer to a four-year college or institution, that they can get jobs, that they can earn a living wage based on the education, the quality education that you provided. And certainly from our perspective, from ACCJC, we want to ensure that you can meet your mission and that you are meeting expected outcomes and achievement for your students. And from the Department of Education's perspective, certainly they rely on the Accrediting Commission to ensure that there's a quality education, because there's over $2 billion in financial aid going to the more than 1 million students that are being served throughout this region. The process of accreditation, it's a 7-year process, and it starts with the self-evaluation that you have prepared. So it starts with the institution measuring itself against accreditation standards, and then it's validated by peers. And it's really, again, used to inform your students and the public that you're providing quality education. And while this is conducted every 7 years, don't think for a minute that it's over once the visit occurs. You're expected to always be meeting accreditation standards, and your relationship with ACCJC is an ongoing relationship. We work with you on an annual basis, on an ongoing basis, to monitor certain aspects of quality based on federal regulations. This is ensuring that you remain a viable institution, you're fiscally healthy. We're obligated to monitor headcount growth or decline to make sure that you continue to meet accreditation standards. If there are any major changes in your programs or in the mode of delivering your programs, you have to go through processes in notifying us, again, so that we can be sure that you're meeting those standards. And in general, we are reviewing the college in the context of your mission. What is the purpose and mission of Pasadena City College? In our region, so there's 7 regional accrediting bodies. Our region, ACCJC, consists of California, Hawaii, Palau, Guam, American Samoa, and we are granting accreditation to 2-year colleges. That's their primary mission. And of course, we know some of our colleges also offer bachelor's degrees, but it's primarily 2-year colleges that is within the scope of our recognition that we're authorized to accredit in these, the regions that you see on the slide. And I think that puts us in a very unique position because of the 7 regional accrediting agencies. So think Northwest, the Southern states, Middle states, Northeast. We are the only agency that accredits only 2-year colleges within our portfolio. All the other agencies have the 4-year colleges and 2-year colleges. And again, this uniquely positions us to advocate for community colleges with the federal government, with the Department of Education. And we want to ensure that they understand, and I don't want to get into politics, but with Jill Biden, hopefully there as well, we know And we hope that they understand and appreciate the role of community colleges. Certainly, our two-year colleges are always under extreme scrutiny. The federal government has tried to advocate for bright lines, indicators of what makes a quality institution based on specific outcomes. And our position is that each institution must decide for itself what its standard is for outcomes and the goals that it's trying to achieve in improving those outcomes. And I think it's important to know also that our accreditation standards, they apply to all colleges that are in these regions. It's the same accreditation standards, but how you meet those standards may be very different. So how you meet those standards related to faculty governance, right? That's managed by AB 1725 and Faculty Senate at the Guam Community College or Marshall Islands Community College, they might not have what you call a faculty senate, but they certainly are going to have policies where faculty have primary responsibility over curriculum. So again, our accreditation standards apply to all colleges in all these regions. They're the same standards, even though they can meet accreditation standards in different ways. I think it's important to just, briefly share with you our mission. In 2015, ACCJC adopted its mission, and we take to heart our role in supporting our institutions to advance educational quality and student learning and achievement. All of the changes and organizational changes that we've been going through have been very much grounded in our own mission, and we work to exemplify the values related to peer review, quality assurance, and institutional improvement, and we want the process to be conducted in a collegial manner. We're also transparent. We have our strategic plan on our website, and we're very much focused on communicating and advancing the mission, leading advocacy efforts on accreditation, and fostering innovation, because we know that our colleges need to innovate to achieve their ambitious goals. And we can't just do things the old way. We need to try new things and not be afraid to fail at them, learn from them, and again, support our students in pursuit of their goals. Keeping in mind the mission and values of ACCJC, we launched a few years ago this portfolio model where each vice president has a portfolio of colleges it supports. So in my role in supporting PCC, I was at the college. I feel so grateful I was able to come on campus, and you must have had close to 100 people in a large room just above where the cafeteria is. And we conducted training to discuss how to prepare a concise and relevant, a strong ISER, which you'll be reviewing the fruits of that labor today. We've been trying to focus more on education, less on sanctions, and just streamlining our reporting requirements so that we can both ensure accountability, but don't want to unduly burden our colleges. We know you've got so much work that you're doing on so many initiatives, and we just want to, again, make sure that there's the accountability piece that's there, but also empathize with the great work that you're doing at your college. We're piloting some new things within our institution. One is the formative summative approach to peer review, which inserts a formative component. That pilot will be occurring simultaneously in spring as your college is being reviewed. And we are looking forward to reviewing and creating a new set of accreditation standards. So the accreditation standards are reviewed and adopted every 10 years. You're on the 2014 standards, and we look forward to the 2024 standards when we can revise and work with our membership in defining with our peers, what does it mean to provide a quality education? What do we expect of each other? And what standards will we hold each other to ensure our students achieve their goals and you provide a quality education. Just a few words on the process. I know for the colleges, as they complete their ISER and in anticipation of a visit, it feels like you're getting ready for the test and it's the end of a process. And I just want to reiterate to you, the ISER and this process, it's the beginning of the process. Your history in the past, I want to almost say it's not relevant. Of course, you go through your history to where you are now. It defines who you are. But our assumption is that you're an accredited institution, you meet accreditation standards, that you're in the beginning of this process by writing a report that provides evidence and validates that you're meeting accreditation standards, that you've taken this opportunity to reflect and make improvements. And you have this report, and the board will be reviewing this report. And this is the same report that goes to the peer review team that will read the report, look at the evidence, visit you virtually, ask questions where they need clarification, to validate where you're meeting the standards, and to help inform your improvement areas, any areas where you need to strengthen to be in alignment, greater alignment with the accreditation standards. And as well, to note those areas where there is excellent practice and you exceed the accreditation standards and other colleges can learn from you in those areas. So the peer review team will provide commendations and recommendations. Their report and their work is the basis for the commission to make its decision. So our commission is composed of mostly elected members from the field. We have administrators, faculty, a few appointed members from like the state chancellor's office, a representative from private institutions. The commission is the decision-making body. And they will make their decision based on your ISER and the peer review team and their report on your accredited status. And it'll be important for you, the board, to validate, at this juncture, as you're doing this ISER review, that what's in the ISER reflects the nature and conditions of the institution, because the team and the commission is making its decision based on this process. And if there's any follow-up necessary, your president is going to need your support to move those recommendations and actions forward in your own continuous improvement process. So again, the ISER is the beginning of the process in this 7-year cycle. The accreditation standards, it's really kind of the meat of your ISER and where you will have reflected on the accreditation standards. They are organized into 4 big areas. And I like to think of standard 2 as kind of the heart and soul of the accreditation standards. It's where your students and your faculty reside, and it's where the teaching and learning occurs. Certainly standard 3 is kind of like your lungs. You can't function without having physical resources, financial resources. And then I think of standard 1 and standard 4 as the brain. You have to have a mission and purpose, and you, the board, are really guiding forward what that vision and what that purpose is, and working in conjunction with standard 1 and the content in standard 1 to see if you're accomplishing your mission, and monitoring all the vital systems and the data that you need to look at to ensure that you accomplish your mission. This is an institutional review process. Accreditation is not about any one particular program. We're looking at systems and institution, and there are these important tenets that are embedded within the accreditation standards in focusing on the institution as a whole. And the board has a critical role to play in many of these tenets. That is, how do you as a board know you're accomplishing your mission? What are the processes for improvement? Are your resources adequate to support your mission and to support your students? And do those processes provide you with the adaptability so that you can meet the changing needs of your students and the changing landscape of higher education and the pandemic and anything else that may come before us, so that, right, you can adjust your policies and the college can continue to serve and meet its mission. Every standard has several subcomponents, and so your ISER will be organized in this fashion. And you can certainly tell me about any position or job or function at a college, and I can link it to an accreditation standard. It covers everything from counseling and financial aid to custodial to your buildings, your tech, your faculty, curriculum processes. And we've defined those statements of good practice in all of the areas. But again, as a board, your role in ensuring that accreditation standards are met is primarily at the policy level, and that you are responsible for guiding PCC to achieve its mission by setting appropriate policies, ensuring your fiduciary responsibilities, and then delegating that responsibility to implement the mission, implement your policies to your president. And she makes all that magic happen. So I'm just going to pause for a moment before we go a little bit deeper on the board roles and responsibilities as it relates to the accreditation standards, and then we'll follow with a section on the ISER review. Are there any questions just in general about accreditation standards or the process? All right, I'm hearing silence. I'm going to take that as thumbs up and keep on.
I do have a question. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. So now that we are going into this time of COVID-19 and I'm seeing the 7-year cycle, we are anticipating that maybe it'll be another 1 or 2 years, so how would that impact the self-evaluation, given that we have this pandemic going on that may, impact or distance learning or some other areas on campus? Where does that fit in, or does it fit in?
Well, so we are adjusting our review of the colleges due to the pandemic. And our review is going to be based on your ISER and the evidence that you provided in the ISER. For the most part, it's probably pre-pandemic information anyhow. Of course, the peer reviewers will ask questions about, well, how have you progressed along those plans? Or what is the update to your evidence? And what we've told colleges all along when the pandemic hit, and even now for those colleges who are beginning those processes, make sure you document any adjustments that you have made due to the pandemic. So I'm going to give an example. At some colleges, they've gone through their bargaining processes and they're suspending performance evaluations for a period in time. And our accreditation standards require that you evaluate employees on stated intervals. So again, the college can make an adjustment. It can document the reasons for that adjustment, and it needs to have a plan for moving forward to ensure that you will continue to meet those accreditation standards. In your review, certainly distance education will be impacted, because when the review occurs in spring of 2021, the peer reviewers will be looking at your online courses from fall 2021. And so we've adjusted our protocol, and they will be looking at courses that were always intended to be online, as well as a cohort of courses from the entire pool of courses that you offer to help inform how well you're meeting the regulations related to regular and substantive interaction, equitable student services. So we're making some adjustments, but again, we expect that you have systems in place, you're following those systems. If you've made any changes due to the pandemic, you've documented what those are, and that you will continue getting back on track if there were any blips moving forward.
And if I can add, I just scared a team to Cuesta College, and part of our visit, we specifically asked Cuesta to talk about the kinds of things that they had done to make changes. You know, what had they done to accommodate the pandemic, just as a point of information. But it certainly wasn't, the team is looking for a way that you're now no longer meeting the standards because of the pandemic. And I think as Gohar already mentioned, when it comes to reviewing the online distance ed classes, I think the ACCJC was really wise to say, give us a list of the classes you normally would have offered online. We're not interested in looking at the classes that faculty, you know, put online or just learned how to do. We want to see what you would normally have been offering online, and then that can be evaluated. And then the last thing I want to say is that in the olden days, when the ACCJC was not as kind or gentle, visiting teams were encouraged to, you know, kind of roam the campus when they were there, and to just walk into classrooms, and it had a really destabilizing effect on the visits, and it was not really a great way to assess whether or not learning is happening. And so I think the way that the ACCJC has adjusted its expectations to really be looking to assess quality based on the expectation that a class was created to be online is really important. And I really applaud the ACCJC for adjusting those requirements.
Thank you.
You're awesome, Gohar.
Oh. Let me see if I can share my screen again, huh? All right. Thank you for that question. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time on the board roles and responsibilities as it relates to accreditation standards. And this is standard 4C. There are really two areas that I want to focus on. One is your role in mission-directed leadership. So making sure that, of course, you have a mission, you're supposed to approve the mission, and ensuring that you meet that mission, as well as your own processes and evaluation improvement as it relates to the board's performance as its own entity. And I think it's worth reading Standard 4C1. I always walk around with the accreditation standards. I don't expect you to have it in front of you, but it summarizes kind of what the board's role is. And it's the institution has a governing board that has authority over and responsibility for policies to assure academic quality, integrity, and effectiveness of the student learning programs and services, and financial stability of the institution. And Standard 4C5 speaks to the governing board establishing policies to ensure the quality, integrity, and improvement of student learning programs, services, and resources necessary to support them. And that you have the ultimate responsibility for educational quality, legal matters, financial integrity, and stability. So again, you have great responsibility, and that responsibility comes through the policies that you set forth and through your holding the president accountable to implementing those policies. And certainly, high performance of the board is your own self accountability. You want to make sure that your assessing your own effectiveness, and making sure that you're operating as an excellent board. And I have to tell you, you know, we see, when we see issues and when it goes to the board, it's just amazing how quickly you can have a great board and then it just, how things can fall apart. So really following your policies is key, making sure that you revisit and review those policies and that you hold your president accountable for implementing those policies. One of the other concepts also that I'd like to talk about as it relates to the accreditation standards in this process is your own accountability. And your alliance, once you become elected to the board, is to the college, not those stakeholders and the people who elected you. Your responsibility is to the college and to protect the college from undue influence and to act as a collective entity. And again, you are focused on setting what your expectations are for the college, not how to achieve them. Your president and her team implements your policies and puts in place the operational pieces to ensure that the college meets its mission and works towards achieving its goals. There are 7 major areas, and these are also reflected in the standards. And during the visits, you know, the team will have reviewed your ISER, and 1 or 2 persons, or perhaps 3 persons, will be assigned to looking at standard 4C to validate that you meet the accreditation standards. And they might hold some meetings with you to ask some questions. And typically those questions align with these important roles that the board serves. And so I ask you just, you know, pause and take a moment to look at these roles and think of an example of how you meet these roles. What you do that demonstrates service in this role. Certainly, I think number 4 is the easiest and most obvious one, right? You review a tentative budget and you adopt the budget in its final form. And then I'm certain that you monitor the budget with regular updates from your CFO. But in all of these areas, you certainly want to think of examples of how do we do this? And you might get questions, you know, how do you ensure that your policies and practices promote educational quality? How do you develop an understanding of your academic programs? I'm looking at item 3. How do you ensure that learning is assessed, that data is used? So think about the presentations and the reports that you're asked to review throughout the year and how you meet these roles. And those are good examples of how you're meeting various standards, because these are all linked to accreditation standards. And certainly, while it might not be in your ISER, even today, right, you're participating in this study session on accreditation. And you could speak to that in an interview in how you're developing board capacity for understanding accreditation. Again, your responsibility lies to the institution. You don't represent any specific constituencies once you're acting as a board. And we emphasize this because, again, these are some of the areas that get folks into trouble. Here are some of the areas also where you practice your accountability. They're highly tied with standard 4C8. And you know, what do you look at to ensure that PCC is accomplishing its mission for student success? What key indicators do you review? Again, just think about reports and documents that you review in carrying out your role and responsibility towards mission accomplishment. I cannot emphasize enough, and we emphasize to our peer reviewers, that the accreditation standards are discussed in the context of the college's mission. And we don't assume that your college is the same as any other public California community college, right? You are guided by the students that you serve and who they are, bounded by certain geographical location, and whatever your mission is specific to serving those students. Briefly, I don't want to talk about all the things that can get boards into trouble, but I just want to touch on them and just bring them to your attention, because boards are so challenged, especially right now, right? We know that you have so many challenges ahead with the student success, the funding formula, the pandemic, anticipated budget shortfalls that many of our colleges are experiencing, enrollment declines, exacerbated student inequities, and trying to close those gaps and serve students in general and in the context of COVID. And so much of the anti-racist work that, the spotlight is just shining on it. And, I say we, but all of us need to do more work and be more effective in our work to close that. And so again, you just want to be paying attention to these areas, your budget, carrying out your fiduciary responsibility, making sure you understand your role, the president's role, acting as a full board, as one entity. And
Gohar,
yes,
you have a question from Trustee
Okay.
Osterling.
yes, of course. Thank you.
Hi, Gohar, thank you for allowing me to interrupt. I wanted to get your thoughts on the first major bullet point, which is balancing the budget, especially during an economic downturn. And then the second sub-bullet under that is kicking the can down the road to a later era, to a subsequent board. And if I may, those two ideas are really directly opposite of each other. So if I'm reading this correctly, and maybe I'm not, that we're saying balancing the budget is an area of concern. Is the concern that we're balancing the budget when we're in an economic downturn, or is the concern that we're not balancing the budget? And what I'm getting at is the second bullet point says, don't kick the can down the road to a later era.
Yeah, well, I think the concern is we want to make sure that you are balancing the budget,
Okay.
right?
Well,
And
that's what I
that
thought,
we don't want you to just ignore what you know might be coming down the road 2 years from now, because
Yeah.
you won't be in elected office, so you don't need to make that hard decision, for example.
Right.
But really to think about institutions' viability in the long term. And of course, all of this is in the context of based on information that's available to you. And we know that information changes on a regular basis, but really taking that responsibility to heart and being realistic.
Yeah. So just following up on that, and thank you for clarifying. Right now, we're in an obvious, interesting period in California, and I'm sure in other states. Here in California, substantially all of our funding comes from the state. And so far, the state is maintaining our budgets and effectively has told us, don't cut back on your personnel, and we're going to give you your full budget, but we're deferring payment of it. And I don't have an easy answer for my question here, but we all are concerned that we will also have, even if things get better and we have a vaccine for COVID, thankfully, hopefully, that next year's budget will be even tougher. So I don't know how to say it, but in effect, we've been asked or instructed by the state to kick the can down the road. It's a difficult question, and there isn't an easy answer. I just wanted your thoughts on how the accreditation looks at that challenge in these times.
Can I just pop in here to say that I think that, and Gohar, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what the ACCJC would want to see is that we were mindful and thoughtful and did our research into the types of ways that we could address this. For example, taking out tax revenue anticipation notes, you know, the level of detail and research that we're putting in to make sure that we take out the right kind, that we that we reduce our financial liability, that we do it at the most, you know, at the least cost, and that we're trying to not do that so that we can have popcorn machines in every office. We're doing it so that we can meet our obligation to our students and our staff and our faculty. And so it's less about the fact that we're being forced into this by the state than it is how we manage it. Would you say that's true, Gohar?
Yes, and certainly through the accreditation standards, they're very much process and policy oriented. Now, ACCJC does monitor fiscal health through its annual reporting process. And that's where, you know, there's audit, there's indicators for fiscal health. And we are working with our institutions when we see, you know, they come out of the green light zone to the yellow light zone. And it's based on financial indicators. And that process won't necessarily, that's not really reviewed during this peer review process, but it is monitored by the commission on an annual basis through its annual reporting.
Yeah, we fill out an annual fiscal report.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yeah. So just moving on, again, part of the standards are ensuring you hold yourselves accountable as a trustee, how you can be more effective as a board, how can you be more effective? How do you help your college president be successful so that PCC can meet its mission? And certainly, I would anticipate that you've got processes in place for building the board, evaluating your effectiveness, and monitoring your own goals and actions. I wanted to jump into this section because the time is short. Standard 4C13 is really one of those standards where we want to make sure that the board is informed about accreditation standards and processes, the status of the accreditation, as well as ensuring that you're supporting through policy the college's efforts to improve and excel. I know you've got a first read of the ISER that's coming up. And when you finalize that ISER, there is a certification page that all of your constituent groups need to sign off on, as well as the board, attesting that there was effective participation by the campus community and that the ISER reflects the nature and substance of this institution. So you want to make sure that you understand what is in the ISER, because it's ultimately one of those tools, not the only tool, but one of the tools that the college will use to guide its continuous improvement processes. And so when you're reading the ISER, I pick up again those areas that the board has some role in through its policies. You want to ensure that you understand what's in the ISER and that it reflects your knowledge of how PCC operates. So when you're reviewing the ISER, you know, and if you're you're looking at institutional mission. Of course, you want to make sure that it's understood that you review and adopt the mission, that you, as a board, you're reading the ISER, you're looking at the ISER. It includes those indicators of effectiveness that you review to ensure that you're accomplishing your mission. All of these areas ultimately fall under your responsibility. So you just want to make sure that the ISER reflects your understanding of the college. As you look at those areas, again, when you look at that cycle, keep in mind, the commission is going to make its decision based on the ISER and what the team validated. And if there are areas of improvement, whether it's compliance or improvement, it's going to be up to the college with the board's leadership standing behind this peer review process to ensure that the necessary follow-up occurs so that the college continues its alignment and meeting of accreditation standards. So you really want to be, behind the ISER, ensuring that it accurately reflects what's happening at the college, how the college operates. And of course, standard 4C, you'll get some questions from peer reviewers about, well, how does the board evaluate itself? I'm looking at standard 4C10. Please tell me about that. So you want to know that. How do you ensure academic quality? What is your role in that? And you might want to have some, thoughts about that grounded in the ISER. The team members don't have a little checklist of questions. Their questions come out from what's in your ISER. So I'm just kind of pausing. If you have questions, I can stop the share screen. But again, in reviewing the ISER, your role is to be sure that you're informed and that ISER reflects the nature and substance of the institution. I'm going to stop share so I can see you all and see if, there you go. Oh.
Trustee Silver had a question.
Hi, so I see in this 319-page document that we already have the section about the board that is filled in, it's written. And was that written by, was there a board subcommittee that wrote this recently, or is this left over from the last time?
So that is an excellent question. We had over 100 people on campus participate in the writing of this document, and we actually finished it about a year ago. And so the past year has really just been editing and refining it and then taking it through the shared governance process to get everyone to sign off on it. But if you'll refer to pages 37 and 38 and 39, it actually breaks down for you for each section who was in charge of it and who actually participated in writing it. So for standard 4, it was Lenore Rogax and Sheila Rose. All of these standards were a collaboration between one administrator, typically a dean, and one faculty member, and then you can see the list of contributors. And Erica, of course, had a huge part in writing this section.
Thank you.
One of the
can I also offer, and your colleague Berlinda Brown, who served on the accreditation steering committee for the entire process. So Berlinda, do you want to say a few words about your experience?
Well, yes, I certainly will. So basically, we went over each section, and Lenora, like I said, and Dr. Andrew Jonas and myself, we reviewed everything and, either agreed or disagreed. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a very good process. and it reflects what's going on from the board perspective, and not only the board. Each section, which we went through forever, for guess what, was that who knows how many months and weeks, but no, with a fine tooth pen, we all were working on that. So I'm very pleased with the end result of this report.
Yeah, and Trustee Silver, just so you know, we never use leftovers from other accreditation cycles, partially because the standards change, and partially because that's not cool. And the only institution I know that actually did that, their chief instructional officer was walked off the campus when they discovered that he had just taken another college's accreditation report and inserted that college's name into all of the standards. We don't do that.
I'm like, la, 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 la. No. You know, what I would emphasize, you know,
years ago.
Okay. The ISER, it's a technical report. This is not, you know, your big marketing document, right? It's really that process, that opportunity to reflect on those statements of good practice, finding the evidence. It's got to be evidence-based, right? It's not just narrative that was written. Finding evidence that you meet that accreditation standard, and then writing a narrative that provides some analysis of how you meet the standard. And in that process, when the teams were gathering evidence, you know, I would guess there were probably some areas where there was a lot of discussion, like, oh my goodness, we don't have as much evidence as we thought we did. Where's the evidence? How do we collect the evidence? And they made improvements. Or maybe in discussing, you know, how they meet an accreditation standard, having these stakeholders come together. And it's not often you get to reflect in this, you know, context on how the college is doing as a whole. Maybe they discovered we can do much better in this area. Let's change our process. And they can put in place the processes 2 years in advance of when the report is actually due. So we've always emphasized during the trainings that this is an evidence-based report, and the peer reviewers are going to make their assessment of your college based on the evidence and that they review and the interviews that they conduct, because also inevitably, you know, you've got 100 people writing a report. There are many hands in it. And when you come in as an outsider, sometimes it can get a little confusing, and you need to have that conversation to get the clarity on how things work at the college.
And if I can just say that one of the things I really appreciated about the way that Thea and Crystal did this process this time around was that they started with the evidence and then they wrote the narrative. And that is the exact opposite of the way that a lot of colleges do it. And the reason it's so significant is that if there's no evidence of it, it didn't happen. Like, you can't manufacture evidence for this to support your accreditation, the fact that you're meeting accreditation standards. So I really applaud how Thea and Crystal, Berlinda, and everybody on that accreditation steering committee really said, okay, here's what the standard is, what evidence proves that we do it, and then let's write the analysis. And it's just really awesome.
And just to put some numbers to that, we examined over 1,000 pieces of evidence and ended up keeping about 700 of them. And that's all the links that you see in the ISER document.
And the peer reviewers, keep in mind, they're volunteers, so they will be expected to read the entire report and again, come up with their analysis and assessment based on that review of the evidence. So we appreciate all of your hard work and time. We know it's a huge project. Again, we've tried to reduce the burden a little bit. But in the end, you've got this document that qualifies what Pasadena City College does, what Pasadena College does, as it relates to the accreditation standards. And we don't monitor whether you're meeting Title V or whether your nursing is meeting their nursing accreditation requirements. This is our accreditation standards. It's the institutional review based on what our membership, our peers, believe make a quality institution.
Okay, any other questions for Gohar? Jim, Trustee Osterling.
I wanted to just make some comments. First of all, Gohar, thank you for joining our meeting and giving us that presentation. But I also wanted to thank Trustee Brown and Thea as a proxy for everybody that worked on this. That's quite a team if we all go and look at pages 37 to 39 and see who all participated in this effort. And I wanted to thank Tammy for your question, because it brought up some good dialogue about how these things are created from scratch and from evidence each time around. And it's a huge undertaking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm an accreditation geek, so I really love all this stuff. And I, Gohar and I have worked together on a visit to a couple of other districts, and having the vice president, having Gohar as our connecting point, not only is she helping us on this side of the story, but then when the team is here, she's going to be working with them, helping them keep their focus on the standards, because and there will be new people on the team, meaning people that haven't ever served on a team before. And then there will be people who have served on multiple teams and might be functioning with some of the old way of doing visits. And as a team chair, one of your jobs, and I have just experienced this, is to help folks who did visits under the old way of doing it, to understand that we're really just, it's just the facts, ma'am. Just sticking with the facts. Does the college meet the standard? Doesn't matter what they do at your college. Doesn't matter what you would like to see. Not relevant. All that matters is, do they meet the standards? And so I'm really looking forward to the visit, especially having done it on the other side of the equation as a virtual visit, and it'll be great. But thank you, Gohar. Thank you, Thea, for all of your hard work. Trustee Brown, really, I know it's a ton of work, and I just appreciate it. And to all of you trustees for reading the ISER. It's a big document. It's all about the great things that happen at PCC, and I, appreciate it.
How did you like our data questions, Erica?
I love the data questions, Trustee Osterling. I see Sandra has her hand up, as does
and Berlinda. Sandra, go ahead.
My question is that this ISER report that's going to be submitted, is that going to be the end-all be-all report, or during this 7-year cycle that at a certain point there still can be adjustments made to the report? So I guess my question is, like, once the board signs off on this document, is that it? That's the final doc? Or during the visits and during the discussions in the cycle, that the report can also be amended?
Go ahead, Gohar.
I would say, so the ISER is a tool to facilitate, right? To facilitate the team's work, your peer review team's work, to document and validate that you're meeting accreditation standards, and to identify any potential areas of improvement or commendation. The commission makes its decision, and then after you get an action letter which states what your accredited status is and confirms or affirms the team's finding, the commission can change the team's findings, by the way. That feedback will be provided to you so that you can continue on your ongoing improvement areas. The ISER then is really not used actively, because we know you're an evolving organization and institution. Even you're submitting it now. 3 months from now, your institution will have evolved and moved forward from even right now, and we know that. Your college will be required in the 4th year of the 7-year cycle to provide a midterm report. So if you don't have any compliance issues which need to be addressed immediately in a midterm report, you would write about any self-identified plans that are in the report. You would provide updates on your quality focus essay. And that essay, also you want to make sure it's aligned with the goals of the college in terms of improving student learning and achievement. That might be one of the areas you want to discuss as well. And so the commission will get an update in its 4th year, but it won't necessarily, we don't go back to the ISER and start reading it from A to Z because you will have evolved. It's really just a tool to validate that you meet accreditation standards, identify any improvements areas and commendation areas, and then you keep moving forward.
Yes, I worked on a few of the WASC reports when I was with a couple of private institutions, and the residuals of that keep coming back to me. So I just want to make sure that this is certainly, a similar process, but much more forgiving in a way.
Yeah, Trustee Brown, you had your hand up.
Actually, yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to say that as I went through this process, I really, and not only me, several of the participants really realized the awesome jobs that we are doing at PCC. In particular, the different programs. There are just so many awesome programs that we have and we can validate and showcase. So I am happy that I was part of this process. I was able to learn so much about all that we're offering at PCC, and it was just tremendous. It was just wonderful. So I am very confident that when the team comes in, they will be impressed. We don't have no holes anywhere because it's a wonderful piece. Thank you.
Gohar, a tough question for you. When do you anticipate that your campus visits will be back to a live format?
We don't know. We hope in the fall. We haven't called it yet. We're sort of in the wait and see. But once we start recruiting for our peer reviewers in mid-spring, by that time we'll have to decide whether, the colleges will be open or not, and whether we feel comfortable in recruiting members and sending them to college campuses for this process. So we don't know yet. Well, I just want to thank all of you for your interest and your engagement and all the hard work you do on a regular basis, fulfilling your roles as a board and your leadership team. I congratulate you for getting to this milestone place where you have an ISER that can be reviewed and used as the basis for the college's improvement processes and for affirming that you meet accreditation standards. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gohar. And thank you again, Thea and Berlinda in particular.
Yes, thank you.
At this point, Erica, are we going to take a break and recess to closed session starting up again at 6 p.m.?
That is correct. This is a study session, so it's not connected to the next set of board meetings. So we will exit this and then we will all come together at 6 o'clock and do our usual routine.
Okay, so I'll call an adjournment to this study session and we'll see everybody again for the open session at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Gohar.
Thank you again, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Berlinda. Thank you.
Bye.